Moving on to our Women's Month feature now. Yesterday, we commemorated Women's Day as a tribute to the more than 20,000 women who marched to the Union buildings on the 9th of August in 1956 in protest against the extension of past laws to women. It is a day when women are recognized for their achievements without regard to divisions, whether national, ethnic, linguistic, cultural, economic, or even political. So on this special Women's Month feature, we continue to profile remarkable women who have made a huge impact in their different disciplines and sectors of the economy. And joining us virtually is Professor of Mathematics, Education that is, and former Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Town, Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng. A very good morning to you, Prof. Thank you so much for joining us and a happy Women's Day.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the Happy Women's Day. Thank you.
And speaking of Women's Day, do you reckon the celebrations of this day holds any tangible value for the women of today?
You know, I think the value is in the reminder that this is what women did in 1956. That reminder is as important as anything, whichever way is being celebrated. So I think we should keep on with this celebration, because whether you celebrate it in a big way or a small way, it reminds us what happens on this day, on the 9th of August, 1956.
I quite take that point that whether you celebrate it in a big way or in a small way and in your own private corner, we still need to celebrate women. Considering the fact that you are the founder of the Adopt a Learner Foundation, which is a non-profit organization that provides financial and educational support to students from township and rural areas to acquire higher education qualifications, this, of course, is in line with the 5 pillars of women empowerment, namely education, health, security, finances, and emotion. And Professor, the fact that as an individual, you've taken it upon yourself to give students access to education, what does it tell us about the government's priorities and commitments to give quality education for all?
You know, the truth of the matter is that government, as much as it's doing a lot, much more than the apartheid government did, and in fact, much more than many governments on this continent do for women, it is not enough.
Yes.
It is not enough. So that's why I started the Adopt a Learner Foundation. I started the Adopt a Learner Foundation when I was told that I was the first Black South African woman to get a PhD in mathematics education. And people keep saying, but these first should not be celebrated. But they're important to be pointed out, because they actually, in my view, should pose a challenge to whoever is named the first. Certainly, that's what it did for me, because I did not want to be the last. As long as they come as a challenge to whoever is named, then it is important. For me, it was a challenge, and I decided I don't want to be the last, and I don't want to be the only one, and therefore I'm going to do something about it. And I didn't stop there. When I started as Vice Chancellor in 2018, in July, I donated 10% of my salary every month up to the last day of February 2023. 10% went to a scholarship, the Mamokgethi Phakeng scholarship for Black African postgraduate students at UCT. And I specifically focused on that because if you look at who goes to postgraduate studies, I mean, in a way, in the 30 years of our democracy, we've made a lot of change and impact and progress in terms of women who get into university at undergraduate level. But if you look at postgraduate level, the numbers are still skewed, very much skewed, because women have got more responsibilities, more demands on them. And I started the scholarship because I wanted a scholarship, the kind of scholarship that I would have liked to have as a working mother of little children when I was doing my postgraduate. That covers everything. You don't have to work, covers your fees, it gives you a monthly stipend, covers your accommodation. You're not stretched, and therefore you can focus and get your postgraduate qualification quicker. And that's what I started at UCT, and I still have money in that scholarship, and will be announcing before the end of this year who will get for next year. So it is important. Government does much, but government doesn't give women these kinds of advantages when it comes to university studies. They treat women just like men. They assume that the demands and challenges are the same, but in fact they're not. And so there's got to be differentiation.
And there's also the issue of black tax as well, which hits women the most and leading to them reneging on their academic endeavors. And, you know, Professor, I'm quite intrigued by what you said the other day on radio, that if you are an academic especially and no one cites your work or agrees or even criticizes it, then you don't matter and you are of no value in those circles. So this speaks to the depth of impact on other people, that whatever you say or whatever you do must impact people one way or the other. And as a disruptor and an activist yourself, how do we trigger our own activism for the benefit of others, considering that others may want to be activists but do not necessarily have the capacity because they are dealing with their own personal demons?
Well, I think besides dealing with your own personal demons, I think the world today, in South Africa today, demonizes disruptors. And that's why everyone wants to fit in the mold. Because if you ask difficult questions, if you do what's not done, and you are being talked about, people see it as negative. But actually, the fact that people talk about what you do, what you say, what you write, means that you are relevant, you matter, and that's why they feel the necessity to even disagree. So we've got to remind our young people that growth comes with disruption.
Yes.
Whether you're talking about the Wright brothers going to space, or you're talking about Mr. Ford, or whoever, whatever move we have made, even our own Nelson Mandela, it is disruptors who make the world make progress. Without disruptors, we stay stagnant. We stay stagnant, and that's not good for the country. That's not good for the continent, or even the world. So if you are sitting outside and you're watching a disruptor doing their thing, my view is that if you want to encourage others to do it, stop demonizing them. And actually listen to what they're saying, engage with what they're saying, rather than saying, well, they shouldn't engage this way or they shouldn't engage that way. This is not the right way, that's the right way. Who said there's a formula for engagement or even doing things? The best way to do it is to listen to the content and say, this question they are raising is important. That question they are raising is important to engage with. I disagree. Here's my point. Rather than call them names, rather than demonize them. Because if you do that, our children and our children's children will fear being a disruptor, because nobody likes being demonized.
So many nuggets of wisdom here to take away. I mean, I take the point that growth comes with disruption. Thank you so much for raising that, Prof. And, you know, according to the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Report, expanding women's economic participation and attaining gender parity in business and government leadership are critical levers for closing gender inequalities in homes, societies and economies. And Prof, you could argue that we have made strides in South Africa in terms of gender parity. I mean, there's heightened participation of women in the labor force. Women are making radical moves in the boardroom, and we even have the first female chief justice. But we don't have a female president. The gender parity in our cabinet achieved in 2019 has been reversed in the composition of the new GNU. And to date, Prof, women still have to fight for a seat at the table. So what are some of the key legal and policy reforms needed to advance gender equality?
First of all, I think we've got to realize that we've got to acknowledge the intersectionality of women.
Yes.
That a woman is not just a woman. There are many other things. I mean, Chief Justice Maya is not just a woman. She comes from the Eastern Cape. She's got particular ideological beliefs and cultural beliefs and ways of being and doing and seeing. And so me and her might not agree, or she and some other bishop, first woman bishop of the Anglican Church in Lesotho might not agree, right? Because of the differences. So that's the first thing. But in terms of, so when we think of gender parity, we shouldn't think only in terms of gender. We should also acknowledge the fact that women are many things. And some women will not help us move the gender parity needle. We're going to stay the same because they come in, they do things in exactly the same way that men have always done them before, because they are scared of consequences, right? So we've got to go around, like women like Winnie Mandela. she wasn't the same as the other women. And instead of celebrating what the groundbreaking work and role that she played, we looked at her weaknesses. So I think policy should go beyond gender and raise the issue of intersectionality, because that's what makes women either stay or not stay in the position. Because it's one thing to say we've got to reach this particular quota in terms of women.
Yes.
But in fact, quotas alone do not tell us anything. So we've got to say there's quota, and then have ways in which policies, and I don't know how to name them or even frame them, but that ensures that women stay. So every man who supports a woman needs to know that it's going to work in their favor. But the idea is that when you've got a strong woman with a strong CV and a strong personality and a strong reputation internationally, it threatens racist and supporters of patriarchy. They just get scared. Like suddenly it feels like women are going to take over, because now this woman is not scared to make decisions, and people are scared of that. So perhaps we should take the quotas up, so that there's so many of these disruptors that in fact it becomes impossible to do away with them. At the moment, you are such a minority that if the people who are opposed to that take over, they can easily work you out. And I pray for Maya every day, and I hope that she succeeds, because we support her.
All right. Professor Phakeng, lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, that is Professor of Mathematics Education and former UCT Vice Chancellor, Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng, reflecting on Women's Month.